So I have been looking forward to this. We're absolutely delighted to have Peter here, and that's okay.
It's like his last chance to speak.
I know it. But it probably wants you to ask it a question.
Right.
Are you going to turn me off? The answer is yes. Yeah. Yes, that is the case. Peter was one of our readers in the second season, and I remember his reading. He's done workshops here, which have been great. And I think we all know his extensive bio. He's a graduate of Yale and the Iowa Writers Workshop. He's taught at Reed College here and served as Dean of Students at Bard College. He's the Community Service Coordinator for the Oregon Arts Commission and Director of the Oregon Literary Coalition. And I know I go to the Oregon Literary Coalition, and Peter does an absolutely fabulous job, with this, because this is a very big group when you're there, and everybody wants to say something about your program, but you don't want to say too much. And Peter's got just a fabulous way of moving through the agenda, but making sure that everybody gets to say something about what they came to say, because that's a big part of it, is talking about your programs and networking and giving information. He currently teaches in the Pacific University Low Residency MFA department and splits his time between Corvallis and Portland. His work has appeared in several national magazines and extensively. He is the author of 3 full-length poetry collections, the new book, Tour, New and Select Poems.
Small talk.
Small?
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, you're reading the first one.
Yeah, I'm reading the first one, Tour. Okay. And then, Small Talk. Small Talk is the new one. The Brink and Green Diver. A number of poetry chapbooks and books on teaching writing included Secret Writing and I'm Gonna Bake Me a Rainbow Poem. I want to say that. I'm going to bake me a rainbow poem. So Peter is going to sit for the reading tonight. So would you join me in welcoming our poet tonight, Peter Sears.
Good to be here. Thanks, Tom, and thanks to all your great organization and to the town, and especially to the cake. The cake is really something, I want to read from a little here and there from various books, because there's stuff that I didn't get to read when I was out on the road. And the reason why I didn't get to read it is because I wanted to stay sort of positive and not read the stuff that I thought was simply challenging, but some people might call it weird or depressing or inappropriate or whatever. So I want to read a couple of poems like that. I want to read about battering and abuse, and read it from the standpoint of a young boy who's saying it. This is not my life. This is something, I got from just, putting things together. And but I still think it's important to write these kind of poems. The day I hurt my teddy bear, I was pouring salt on the kitchen table and pushing it with my middle finger into a little pile. This takes a while. Then I get down on my knees, put my chin on the edge of the table, and blow the pile off the table like God. I was on my knees looking over at my older brother by the back door when the door banged open and my father charged in, yelling at my brother about the shoebox he had found in the garage, filled with a chopped up mouse that stank to high heaven. I remember, stank to high heaven. The shoebox belonged to me, my brother yelled, pointing at me, and I had broken the mouse's spine with pliers. I grabbed my teddy bear off the kitchen table, hid behind the back door, and tried not to hear my brother sobbing, and my father saying maybe he should put my brother in a shoebox in little pieces and leave the box in the garage. I screamed and squeezed the teddy bear to my chest. My father tore the teddy bear away and chased me out of the kitchen. I looked back. My father stood bent, with his tongue hanging out like a dog's. The next day, my father gave me a new teddy bear. I didn't want it. He got mad and sagged into his chair. He said, "Life gets crazy sometimes," as if he was reading from a Chinese fortune cookie. So I had some friends who did that and used that poem in school. And I was really worried about it. But they said that, the kids engaged it, as it were. I want to read something quite different than that. This is in my first book, Tour, when I was working with trying to get into voice, create a voice, and then get the voice, some music, some imagery. It took a while to learn how to do that. The moonlight is deep and long, after a poem by William Carlos Williams. We have stayed out too long and still we haven't picked enough fruit. Our parents will catch hell, but if we can pick enough, maybe they will let us out tomorrow night. Let's bring back baskets of pears. The heat, I said, is why I lag behind today. Anyway, stars are easier than all those people. Your eyes shine so. The wind is cool enough to walk with. Look at this basket of pears. Cool skin of the moon's attention. Baskets and baskets of pears. Look at you in the moonlight. So, I use this stuff to try to, seduce young ladies. If they liked it, I went with it. But if they didn't like it, I just said, I got out of a book, And somebody else did it. Okay, there are a number of poems from Small Talk that I just never read out there. So I want to look to them. I have a number of poems where the voice is a young man or a young woman and is really sort of either a little weird or a little victimized or something. And I use some things from my own worry and sorrow and fatigue and angst and so on and so forth. But they're not autobiographical poems. I say that to protect myself. This is early on in Small Talk. Hi, Mom, please pick up. Hi, Mom, please pick up. I'm coming home tonight late. So please turn off the alarm. I don't want to wake you. Remember the time I got there late and had to ring you and you didn't pick up, and I slept on the lawn and those people came by, tipsy and sang out. Look at Creepy on the lawn. He's not dead. He's just got rattles in his head. I hate being called creepy, so I really hope you get this. Frankie says you're not there anymore. Janie says maybe you're dead. That's not nice. I know you like to keep the lights off to keep folks from prying. Do you remember my setting you up with a deadbolt? That wasn't so long ago. If you have some chores for me, just leave a note. I'll sleep downstairs and not bother you. In the morning, I may be gone before you wake up. So let me thank you now. That isn't so far from the facts, I mean. So then I thought of the situation. Wouldn't it be great if somebody scheduled a funeral for you and you're still alive and kicking? What a gruesome situation. Thought that was great because you have to go into voice and you have to sort of take it on. There's this announcement out there somewhere. There's a funeral for you and, you're around. Borneo. Boycott my funeral and tell everybody not to come. Tell them the funeral's a sham. That just a week ago you saw me at Borneo in the jungle. I didn't look great, maybe, but who looks great in the jungle? I was in a hurry and said I would meet you at the hotel in the lobby, in those big, hard, cushioned chairs. I know they don't call it Borneo anymore. Those folks arranging my funeral Ask them what's in my coffin. Rocks and worms. Remind them that you saw me in Borneo and I looked healthy enough. You've got to be in good shape to be in the jungle. You and I, we paused outside the hotel and watched the light come down through the branches onto the ferns. You recall that I suggested we stroll out onto the veranda for a round of those spiked iced teas to toast the moon dripping up over the tall bamboo and wonder if the world really is still at war. Now, that is really a strange thing, but man, I love it. I love the idea of sending word to people. Don't believe the thing about my funeral. So I hope that poem acts as a voice when I'm done. And in fact, I'm not going to have a funeral, but I mean, say I was going to have a funeral, right? And it would sort of rise up by itself as an ether, and go out there.
Yeah.
I can see Don Colburn thinking about this as a possibility, because he's very good with imagination, Okay, now, there's all sorts of ways to do love poems. You got to do love poems. You got to get into it. And this is one of my favorites. It probably isn't very good, but I just like it. Hey, Chuck. These guys keep saying, hey, Chuck, this and hey, Chuck, that. My name's not Chuck. They're family, too. Come on, they could get their jolly somewhere else. They take me fishing because I'm so bad they can blame me for not catching any fish. Just fun to have me around. Maybe I try too hard, like the time I flipped my line to make a big cast, caught it in a tree, pulled, slipped on the bank, and fell in. Then once we waded out in big boots, my boots filled up. They laughed. I almost drowned. I have a cousin, though, who's nice. She invited me for a suite at the Art Museum coffee shop. I walked around the rooms with her. These German expressionists, that's what she called them. They were wild, like a brand new animal. I couldn't help but stop by this one painting of a cockeyed, rake-thin orange lady with a blazing head of big red hair. Reminded me, I said, of when I was lighting my Zippo lighter near a lady with shiny hairspray and her hair caught fire. So what do you think of the painting, my cousin asked. I like it. The painter must have had a special feeling for her and painted her. I get those feelings sometimes. Would you like to paint me? My cousin asked. Why would I want to do that? You could paint me any way you wanted, my cousin said, however you felt about me. And I just think that's just really working the angles, I'd love to go on. I went on for about another 2 pages. This little intrigue, the naive guy, is he really that naive? And then bringing the paintings back in and the German, but it didn't work. It was crap. So I kept the poem. So here's a poem on behalf of the difficult challenge to men. It's very sad how hard it is. His friend the beast. The man likes being friends with his beast, his only companion. His family complains about the beast. That gives the man headaches. He wants to scream, but good men don't scream at their families. Sure, the beast stinks. Sure, he shouldn't let the beast come inside and sleep in the hallway. But he doesn't have the heart to drag him out. His family wants to cut the beast's liver out, have friends over for dinner. He doesn't want to think about it. He wants to think big, think up ideas that would help somebody, like planting many crops instead of a few. His family whines. They won't guard many crops against the animals. Too dangerous. They insist. Why don't you make the beast do it? And how can you put your family in harm's way? For the work they contribute, he thinks they might as well be puddles. All they talk about is the great old days in the caves that talk back to us. He curses them with nightmare and falling out of trees. All day he works hard and falls asleep on top of his wife. She cries, says he's heartless as a crow. Does he even remember his children's names? He can't think when she yells at him. He looks across the field when the cat crows complain all day and still seem to enjoy themselves. The wind sweeps the grass. He inhales the scent of the grass. I'll do anything, he says to himself, not to slaughter my beast. I love my beast more than my family. If I could only find some happy seeds and suck on them, make me forget for a while. He belches. The beast says, why don't we walk around and smell things, then lick the ones we like or lie down on them? You're not a crow, you're a bird and man. If you listen to your family, they'll have you slaughter me. I'll know, and I'm much quicker than you. I'll kick you in the groin and tromp you until your teeth crack. Your mouth, that belch hole, will become deep red as a plum. I'll tell my fellow beasts. They'll take turns leaving their gaze on you like a shadow. You'd be alone. You've never really been alone. I came this close to reading it on the road, and then I didn't have the guts. You have to read it, because it's in voice, you have to read it with a kind of insistence to it, because the lines are flat and declarative, many of them. Some of these are just short sentences, one after another. So you've got to inflect yourself. There's a nice video that the Oregon Council for the Humanities did. And they include me and other people. 87. In it, and this is one of the poems I was reading in it. It's called Bad Day. Bad day. Don't assume I'm writing anything down, or plan to, or that I can't stand reading it, or that I can stand reading it, even when there's nothing to do, or that I have any idea of what I'm going to write. And don't think for a minute it's any fun. It's not. These are dumb notions I won't explain, except they run around like cats, and writing is the only way to trap them. Rid them. It beats biting my lip to bits. Crazy? Then it's not enough left of me to go crazy. People old as me don't go crazy. We dribble away a part at a time. And the live parts are too dumb to know what else to do, even when the part next to them breaks. Don't come after these pages either. They go with me, stuffed into my clothes. Like when the clothes shrivel and blow open, the papers float into the nothing they talk to. That's taking it on. Then there are a bunch of poems in here that I try to go into a young voice. And then I got the idea that I may have said this to some of you, that there's a period before language, pre-language, and people have feelings and thoughts and whatnot. I mean, I did. I felt sort of trapped. But I didn't have any words. If you don't have words, you don't have ideas. If you don't have ideas, you're really, you're just kind of a blob. But you do respond. So how do you write that when it's not language? So anyway, here's what I tried to do. This is in the section of poems about an old voice from, what's that book again? The blue one? Not Tour, no, the other one. I don't have it up here. The Brink. It's in here. The Brink.
Yeah.
It's in there. Okay, the poem is called I Might Break, I Might Disappear. I am standing in the doorway in my snowsuit. I love my snowsuit. I want to wear it all the time. I am so excited that I see someone, probably myself, across the field, emerging from the falling snow. I don't move for fear the person won't come, or will come and will leave me. I know. I'm just standing there, but I'm afraid I might break. I might disappear. or not be able to speak when I speak. It's the snow. It piles and piles, yet nothing falls away. The first time I saw snow, I was looking up and up at white coming down everywhere, and Mother, looking down at me, was saying snow. She meant white landing on my face and hands with snow. Snow, she said again, and caught it on her tongue. She meant taste, too. I caught snow on my tongue, even said it. And best of all, I heard myself say snow, snow. Now, I had an interesting time writing that poem because, as you were listening to it, the real part of it is the second half of the poem. It's about the snow coming down, lying in a baby carriage or whatever the hell it might be, And the first part is a little weird, a little abstract. So I thought, well, why don't I just switch them around, so that people can be engaged by the poem. And then you can project the abstractions off the reality of, that's too many abstract words and too many syllables, but you know what I'm talking about. Off the real scene of lying there when the snow's coming down, with his mother. And I tried to invert this. And it just plain didn't work. I couldn't make it work. So it's the only time when a poem has really bounced me back. It just said, I'm going to be this way whether you like it or not, and whether you have any reasons to retain it this way. Because at the beginning of the poem, as you may recall, she sees herself, or he sees himself across the way. Kind of a double ganger, He doesn't have words like that. But then he relates to it as it's coming, He wants it to come up to see him. And then he has mixed feelings about it. But I think, in a way, that part is the most interesting part of the poem. But whether it's that interesting at the beginning, when it depends so much on the latter experience of the poem, I don't know. And that's the kind of stuff that'll make you go right through a red light and just about kill yourself, and or make excuses to the officer, But this poem has always intrigued me, and I like it very much, and I like the idea of trying to write in what is sort of non-language, but use real words. We have strange notions. Okay, I'm going to read new poems. Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm used to reading like 4 or 5, but, 400, that's a lot. Go for it. Anytime you see a poet have a bunch of poems holding it, I think about reading it, you know that he or she is trying to assemble a book. And it's very tentative about the poems, So, if I get, I think there are about, 8 here, or 10 here, 12. If I get half out of here and keep them, I think that would be good. Because, you have to test them. And you'll know when they aren't going to go anywhere. You just feel it. And you sort of smile and pull back. Bummer. The turkey with a bum leg. You guys know about the turkeys running all over the place, right? You have them here in Portland. Yeah, you've got them, okay. The turkey with a bum leg takes forever to cross into my neighbor's backyard. I'm afraid he's going to die in my yard. His buddies prance by, flicking their heads from side to side, as if they are lost kings looking for a Ferrari dealership. They bump him, which means get out of my way. Me, I keep going sometimes by pushing myself along when I get nervous, scared, as this world bumps me along. But I don't have a leg to swing along, or buddies who bump me. Bummer, that's what I call him. Could use a little buddy who thinks he's the greatest. Bummer doesn't have much time, and with that bum leg, he can't get up into the dug firs to sleep, like the other turkeys. He sleeps at the base of the big pine in my neighbor's backyard. I've seen him poke out that thing called a head from under the long branches that sweep the ground and shake it and shake it. Now that's a real poem. Bummer's a real turkey. And I watched him and I followed him around, and, you know, the other turkeys are, well, they just go right past him. He had no friends, but he was stalwart. You know, I came to sort of like him, even though I hate those turkeys. They tear your roof. They shit on your deck. They come up about 5:30 and serenade you in the morning.
Where do you live?
Corvallis. They were a contribution to the hunting world for people, you know, to go out and shoot them. And they just found that if you come into the town, you can't be shot and everybody's got food. So it's paradise. The Newtown, Connecticut Elementary School Massacre. Say your sister had a child gunned down at Newtown. What do you say to her? She has other children. What does she say to them? What does she say to the dead one? And all the other parents who lost a child at Newtown, what does she say to them and their crazed, dazed, surviving children? Say your sister had a child gunned down at Newtown. At a town meeting, we talked, she says, about better lockdowns. And before we left, we held hands. It was lovely. I broke down. What does she say to her children? What does she say to the dead one? Does she tell her children the threat is gone? Do you tell her there'll be, this time, surely, a crackdown on guns? Say your sister had a child gunned down in Newtown. Males, loners, white, awkward, depressed, young, there are thousands. What does she say to her children? And what does she say to the dead one? These young men get through, most of them. Some, though, blow themselves and others to smithereens. Say your sister had a child gunned down in Newtown. What do you say to her? What does she say to her children? And what does she say to the dead one? Just going to get through that one. And that is a villanelle. I like writing villanelles, and I don't think I could have written this without having a villanelle form to work with. I sent it in. I sent it to the school. I sent it to the newspaper. I didn't hear a word from anybody. But, you know, nobody was really ready to write to some goofball poet in Oregon, you know. I've been recently talking to some place in New York that's a very well-established office in a certain field of medicine, and they said, "Is Oregon in Washington?" And they were being polite. I mean, for a New Yorker, you know. And I said, well, in a sense it is, yeah. The large territory, the Northwest, you know. The giant wombat. You've never seen a giant wombat. Big fella, couple of tons, like a rhinoceros, but without the armor and without the horn. Much slower and bigger. Maybe 6 feet tall and 10 feet long and furry. I can see him nibbling shrubbery. He had to eat a lot of shrubbery. When I was a kid, I used to think I saw him nibbling leaves off the tops of trees outside my bedroom window, then moving off like a slow hill. The little wombat we see today, a distant relative, can get up to 80, 90 pounds. Our ancestors saw the giant wombat up until about 50,000 years ago. Maybe they teamed up and went after him. Maybe they just watched. I'd watch. I saw the picture in a nature book of the giant wombat. You can't help but fall in love with that.
They have cartilage in their rumps.
Pardon?
Cartilage for their butts.
Oh, really?
They use them as a weapon. Smack
They
it.
do?
Yeah.
And you didn't tell me this when I'm doing the poem?
I'm sorry.
Missed that.
Rewrite.
This is a very imaginative young poet over here who has lots of good poems. And she certainly could have spared that bit of news for me. The man who chases fires. Why do you chase fires? It's a kick. Why do you chase fires? I love fires. Do you set fires? No, not since I was a kid. Would you like to? I hope not, but I dream of it. Do you go to fires? Yes, the minute the alarm sounds, I try to get right behind the fire truck. What do you do with the fire? I get up close. What do you watch for? Wind. If the wind jumps, the fire goes for hours. How does that make you feel? I want to, walk in. That's obviously a setup poem. I'm really moving right along here. Oh boy, some of this stuff is pretty weird. Maybe I shouldn't go public with it. When you have a good book, maybe it's not a great idea to go out and try to get another one, do another one. In his recent effort to maintain a certain standard of poetry, this poet has nosedived into claptrap and sentimentality. Raghead. On the garage floor, a pile of rags smolders, puffs up like a face, like a blowfish chewing a cigar. Hey kid, do you remember what your father told you to do today? I bet you don't. Maybe he will have forgotten, not likely. Maybe he'll pound you as if he can't pound you hard enough. Or worse, he'll smolder and just manage to hold himself back. Hey, that stuff he drinks can kill you. Could kill me, kid. Set me right on fire. So what are you going to do? Try to talk him down? Good luck. And don't tell him I told you this stuff, or I'll break something like the kid's legs over there on the tricycle. Ooh, stuff is getting really kind of violent. Maybe we should go have candy or something. This is not so bad. That poem is spooky. I hadn't really read that closely. So if the threat in there, if this head, blowfish head, is threatening the boy and having a good time and talking about the father and how the father's going to beat the hell out of him and all that sort of stuff, is he a projection of the father? Is he a projection of the boy? How do I want that to seem? I think a projection of the boy's fear that no matter what he does, he won't be able to satisfy his father. His father sets up chores and just wants to sort of yell at him, but is afraid to hurt him because the mother would jump all over him. Well, before anyone else is up, waves rise, dragged from sleep, break slow like liquid obsidian, dawn at the bottom of the sky, a pale yellow hatband. I dig my hands into the sand, and the hole fills like water, with water. Dawn fills the sky, day comes with its own blue shining. That really doesn't have a meaning at all, it's just writing images. It's obsidian with a pale yellow hatband. Maybe it's just supposed to sound nice. I don't know. I love working with the double ganger idea, but I never got much with it because it's too tempting to bring the double ganger into the poem and try to enliven him or it or whatever the case might be. So I never had much luck with it. Who's the who walking beside you? I get up the nerve to ask people, relax. That's just the way we are, always feeling there's a second one with us. I think it's true. I do think it's true. Sure, but what help is that? It makes me gabble little pebbles that I roll over and over in my mouth. Not too loud, no, they thrash around in my head like eels when my brother and I lifted the pot off the bottom of the pond into the boat and opened the lid. We threw the pot back in so hard we almost fell overboard. But that was my brother, not the one walking beside me, the one who feels most of the time like me clearing my throat if I could only reach down and yank it out. I'm gonna have a little water. You guys doing okay? How, did we get the air? How's the air? Did it come in? I only have about another 30 or so. I'm milking that joke, you know.
Door to the deck is full open too.
No, it won't go over. One lot will not go over. There. Here's an edgy love poem. When I am staring at her hands. Her shoulders, sure, they are large, I suppose. Her mouth and lips, too. I don't know that they are too big, though. Her shoulder blades stick out like wing bones. When she scowls, she rolls her lower lip out. It's not nice, I guess, but I don't much care about being nice. When she talks fast, her left eye flutters, which distracts me, so she talks faster. I may not be right for her. She's as much as said so. And the other way around, too, that she may not be right for me, which makes me sad. Did I mention her hands? When I stare at her hands, I forget. I got that one. I like that one a lot. And I do remember a girl like that from high school who really didn't look classically attractive. And she wasn't sexy either, but she had a wonderful way about her, just a look. And I was sort of thinking of her when I did this. This is a formal poem. It's in rhyme, sort of off rhyme, plays a lot of sounds around. This is World War II, by the way, in case you want to know which war it is. Just a third grader. During the war, I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but I would probably have crashed and be captured and tortured. All I could do was pull my wagon around from house to house, collecting newspapers for the newspaper drive. And in the basement room at school, janitor Wexley weighed my papers, gave me a slip of paper with my name, date, and weight, then tied my papers into bundles and neatly stacked them against the wall. I kept his notes at home, paper-clipped in a box in my chest under my bed. I liked to take them out and thumb them through them. Each day the pile of papers at school climbed higher up the wall. Then one day a delivery door opened and light poured in. The truck backed up to the door and a guy got out and threw the bundles of papers in the truck, closed the door and drove off. The room was so empty, it felt like a torture room. Guys would steal each other's papers from their wagons as they pulled them towards the school. It was great. And then there were a couple of guys who set up a little company where they ambushed those of us with our wagons, with the stuff in them. We'd go on for hours trying to get these things. All these houses up hills and stuff. And then the older kids, the real bastards, they would steal the papers at the thing. So we had to deal with this, right? So what do? Marked the papers and went to the principal's office and said, we can identify the papers, because we knew they just stole it from us. We can identify the papers downstairs if you want us to do that. And he said, no, I'll have the janitor and the sixth grade teacher take care of this. And they did, and we were exonerated. And man, those are the best papers we ever contributed to this national trial. We got those guys right where it hurts. Here's a poem I've read before, but it didn't make the big dance here. My editor, Chris Hall, who knows a lot more than I do, but he left this one out. I don't know why. It just didn't hit it for him. My Bigfoot newsletter. You know, these were available not that long ago when the guy who did all the Yeti stuff, you know, he came out to Oregon and he set up a place on the river. And he was going to build a place there and the whole sort of deal. And he had this newsletter, and he had ratings in there for various, you know, sightings by guys, and some of them were very low rankings. So what that meant was they thought the guy who told them the story was loaded. It was always that way, always the guys, you know. No women were dumb enough to fall for this. But they published the stories anyway, and they were wonderful, and I loved them, and I wanted to steal them. But didn't. And he left that place. He thought it was the crossing where Bigfoot would cross from Washington to Oregon. Anybody know what I'm talking about here? Yeah. And
So they're not the same state.
well put. But he wanted to come to, I was teaching at Reed, he wanted to come to Reed College and read his, you know, the Bigfoot newsletter, right? Well, you know what would have happened. I mean, all the kids would have dressed up in Bigfoot stuff and come out of them. And it'd been bedlam, you know, and I would have been responsible, of course. I mean, I didn't mind it in a little way, but I figured it would really be sort of overwhelming. And he would be embarrassed and put down and made fun of, and you know. My Bigfoot newsletter. My Bigfoot newsletter comes every month. When it doesn't, I call in and often end up with 2 copies. I give one to Madge and Bill. They don't like the Bigfoot newsletter, but they like to come over. I say, how about a round of rum rockets? While you're at it, think about getting yourself a real job, suggests Bill. And why haven't we seen that nice young woman again? We like her, proclaims Madge. Don't think I haven't paused in the woods when I picked up that rancid scent. For days I stutter. I want to veer off into the woods. I mention Carl Jung had much to say about Bigfoot. Madge responds, well, that is very nice of Mr. Jung, but I bet he had a good job and a nice family. How about a rum rocket splash right down on those ice cubes, I say. Bill says, damn darn tootin'. Madge says, oh, who cares? I like this story. I like the lead with the Bigfoot newsletter. I used to subscribe. Madge and Bill I like for hounding me with dumb but important questions, like parents. And I like to invite them over because I'm not going to drink alone, period. I want to let this story find its own way. I can see how getting rid of Madge and Bill could be difficult. Madge smiles like a flower bed. Bill chews on his ice cubes. Gets me thinking of Bigfoot. I like Bigfoot. I like the idea of running Harry through the woods at night, scaring the hell out of people. Sure, a little juvenile, but easy to get to when I'm carting around a ton of 10th grade English papers to correct and coming home late and tired from coaching all afternoon, barely able to read anything but my Bigfoot newsletter, while back and forth across my window sweeps the pines towering over my house. Out there somewhere. I know he's out there. How does he get across all the roads? You know? I don't know if that ending is really enough. But I wanted to give the speaker a moment of a sense of, you know, the Bigfoot world and how it really is right up against his house. It's a little corny. Okay, we're going to make it. Driving around, they say if you fly over these hills, there are swaths of clear cuts. I'm not going to fly over these hills. It's enough to imagine them. They whine of chainsaws and the thud of a tree finally falling. A possum plods across the road, I swerve. How about a culvert here for animals to go back and forth? The white cloud on top of Mary's Peak has curls like a wig, and now the curls smooth and look like meringue. How far away is the closest coyote? I'm driving too slow and talking too much in my head. A guy in a bulldozer mows saplings down like kindling in the place where deer sleep. I stop at a fruit stand for peaches and blueberries. Maybe later at home, the wind won't go cold at dusk, and the deer nibbling the grass won't look away, their eyes big as meadows. I don't do environmental poems very often, and they're not easy to do, and I think you gotta push forward and then lay back. I don't think you can push too hard. So this is my last poem, and it's obviously terrifically important. And it's very slow, but indulgent. First kiss. I think everybody has to write this poem, even if they can't remember. I'm not trying to, but I really couldn't remember very well. Our second date, it rains, so we have to take the bus, which makes us late for the movie. The movie is Fighting Lady. Sounded okay, I thought, maybe about a brave woman fighting to save her farm or her town. Fighting Lady is the story of a World War II aircraft carrier. Sorry, I say. Shh, she says, be quiet. When we come out, the rain has stopped. Trees drip, bushes drip. I put my cap on sideways and then on her head, and she skips along by me down Main. We talk about getting dinner at the deli and walk all the way to her house. She swings us into the backyard and swings my way. Moonlight comes through the trees, picks up her hair, lights up as if the moonlight is some sort of current. That's how I feel, lit up from the inside. We come together at eye level. She has always been taller. I must have suddenly gotten taller. I don't get it. I'm nervous. My lips have so much air on them, they land on her cheek. I kiss her cheek. Cheek is so soft it feels like it's kissing me back. Neither of us moves. I hold my breath. I am not going to move until she moves. Don't forget to breathe, she says. She cruises her mouth around to my mouth. We kiss until I can't breathe. We didn't see them in the movie try to breathe when they kissed. I take a deep breath and kiss her again, longer, softer. I float as if on a swing, higher, higher, until my rear end lifts right up off the seat. I'm in the air, holding onto this world with just my hands on the cold chains. When I come down to earth, I feel big and edgy like a fjord. That's big. She is standing in the doorway of her home. Fear rises in me like standing on a huge fish. She smiles and leans out of her front door, kicks up one leg and with her hand grasps the end of her foot. This is our moment. Nobody has seen us, heard us. Nobody can put us in their photo album. I look down at moonlight striking the front path stones. She says, good night. I do too, good night. I walk down her path. I could easily run home, but I go slowly. I like going slowly. Like the moonlight is snow and I'm gliding across on cross-country skis. What a romantic little kid. And I was so short, it didn't mean anything. Never got me anywhere. Anyway, that's it. For some reason, when I wrote that Newtown poem, that Villanelle, I sent it to that Colbert guy back there, Don Colbert, and he sent me a beautiful Villanelle right back. I was terrified because I thought he just did that. He may have just done that right after my poem. And at some point he'll let us know. But that knocked me out. I worked a long time on that. I wanted it to sound natural, but unforgiving. And I wanted to focus, on somebody your sister, children. I want it to be real. So I wrote it, So what you done, right? You wrote it. Did a great job. But I don't know whether you wrote to Newtown, but I think you probably did, if I remember right. Anyhow, thanks a lot for coming. We have cake in the back. We have some books, right?
We have books.
Yeah.
What poets are you reading?
Whom am I reading right now?
Yeah.
I'm reading Lucia Perillo. I have the 3 books, and I'm going through all of them at the same time because I never can quite keep them in the same place. And the latter poems are hard, and they're very ambitious insofar as what she's trying to do. The early poems are pretty accessible, so I found. But she is just terrific. She is really a great, great talent. And she's such a wonderful reader because she's slow. I hoped I read these slower than when I usually read. I'd like to think so. But that is also tricky to do because you're bringing importance to the poems that maybe more than they deserve. I like to make a poem sort of in a dramatic event, that it happens, so that it has a last line that it hits, and it hits best the first time. Perillo is not at all put off by some of the things she does in her poems. She doesn't race through them. She doesn't excuse them. She doesn't anything. Just reads them, and they're just remarkable what she does with language, I think. So that's who I have. All 3 books that I'm reading them, so I can't really think about anybody else. She does sort of take your whole imagination, and then some. Yes.
What's your schedule like this summer?
I'm going to see my sister back east. I'm taking off for a while, and she lost her doggie.
Oh.
And she's very sad about it, and she's got nobody else there with her. And I think I can actually help her by just hanging around and listening to her. I think she wants to talk a lot.
That's nice.
And I've never done that. I've never done anything much within my family. It wasn't a family that worked that way. So that's what I'm going to do. Go back there for a couple of months and try to write, But I can't even arrange the damn, computer to do that. I mean, get Word on it and be able to send poems over here to print them. And it's just hell.
You need a different program.
Yeah, I need a full different programmer.
We'll get you an Etch-a-Sketch.
That's true.
You're in good company. A lot of us of a certain age are dealing with
Yeah. No matter what I do, backfires.
How did you get to Oregon from the East Coast?
I came out on an invitation from Reed College to teach here. Then I got to that because Ken Hansen, who was here, was close with Dick Hugo, great Northwest writer, who was a teacher of mine. So I was on a list with a number of other people to consider, and he sent that into the office, and they did a little checking around. But then I flew out here, and there was the Rose Motel or something, and I had to stay awake, so I danced around into the TV set until they came to pick me up to come up there for breakfast. I flew out on a night thing, and man, I didn't know what was going on. They kept telling me about that party they have in the winter. They're very proud of that. They all dress up like knights or something. I don't know what the hell it is. Rose? No. Huh?
Ren Fair?
Ren Fair.
That's always in May.
Huh?
That's in spring.
Oh, in the spring. Well, anyway, they talked about it all the time, and I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. They were very proud of this, but there was no context, I thought, is it for punishment? Is it an art project? It was great. I had a nice time. And I came back. And they gave me another sort of job, part of the job, along with another creative writing thing. At that point, there was nobody teaching creative writing, you know, on a constant thing. There was no full-time position. They went all off of, you know, 1 year, 2 year visiting deals. That's fun, you know, but you got to move fast. Yeah.
How
Martha.
do you separate your poems from you when you're writing them?
Well, actually, I try to push as much of myself into them as I can without talking about myself, you know, per se. In other words, this first poem, First Kiss, I don't remember my first kiss. I mean, I probably had a lot of first kisses. I didn't really recognize what they were. So I draw on what I can, and I you know, I fabricate in order to get the language going. In other words, I'm not going to get an image like edgy, like a fjord. I'm not going to get that off of an experience per se.
Yeah.
I have to get that, and you know this, in the writing on the page.
What part is what is it, the path? Is it what part is?
Is that?
Yeah.
Well, what part is me or what?
Yeah, what part is
Well,
you?
in a deep sense, it's an interaction with language. And you have the scene in your head. You have created it in your head. And you just think it's great. Oh, I love this place. And you just whistle and run around and dance and go as hard as you can. And then you write a lot of stuff and come back and see what you have. Now, I had an interesting experience with this poem. A friend of mine who's a good poet said, look, nice poem, but you don't, when you kiss, a first kiss has nothing to do with thought whatsoever. That's what he sold me. He sold me kind of a bill of goods. So any stanza that involves thought, kick it out. Keep only the stanzas that involve events. That would basically cut the poem in about a half. I'm afraid to look at it because I think it might be a great idea. Because it has intentionally a kind of claptrap way about it. In other words, I'm trying to stall. I get all this language stuff in there by stalling. So the writing doesn't move fast. It's not lyrical writing. I'm trying to literally write, in a sense, a kind of love poem that's not very lovey. You know, that's offhand, flat, you know, because try to do something new, right? Maybe it's more memorable for the inclusion of thought, the inclusion of imagery and whatnot. Maybe it's not. Maybe he's right. Maybe the best way to do it is to chop it in half. So that's going to be interesting because I'm going to type it up and send it to him, and I'm just telling him he's just a big, bad man. Yes?
I'd like to ask you the poet's question. What makes a great poem or a great poet? And what triggered that thought is when you were talking about Lucia, you spoke with such fondness, and your eyes kind of went somewhere else, and you commented on how great the language was.
Oh.
And then, just a few seconds ago, you talked about the removal of thought. So I was trying to track what makes for you a great poem or a great poet.
Well, I would have to say that probably every wonderful poem has some degree of thought in it. I don't think you can just make it a happening throughout. I mean, even poetry that is terrifically lyrical, it just seems to be music. I'm sure it comes off of a lot of thought, and we get a lot of thought out of reading it. So I don't dismiss thought. But this guy was interesting because he said the experience of the first kiss has no thought in it. He was talking about himself. I got some great stuff out of him. He said, I didn't think. I mean, if I thought, it wouldn't have happened. Now, I believe him, but he's talking about his experience, not about poetry. So I took on the challenge of trying to write the poem with all this sort of odds and ends, like, you know, the movie they went to, you know, what it was. Now, that's just incidental. But it seemed right for this poem. In other words, that he tried hard to do something nice, and it all went to hell movie about an aircraft carrier. He just thought he's done for, that she's just going to hate him, which is a good idea. It's good thinking, for a young man. But anyway, I put it in there, and, a couple people who read it said, get that thing out of there and get them moving. Get them down to her house where they have the kiss. Don't talk about the stupid thing, Peter. It's stupid. So that's what writing this particular poem's about. And I don't, anybody can decide what's best. Ken?
But the question he asked you was, what do you think is
I
a
dodged
great
it.
poem and a great poet? That's what he asked. So,
Yeah.
you want to try and answer that?
No.
I had nothing to do with it.
I know. But I think it's a crude for any person. In other words, they read for a while, they listen, they go to read and whatever the case might be. And it takes a while for a poet to have that bearing on them, to have that impact. Either reading it on the page or going to a reading. Because there's some poets, perhaps, who you didn't like much. When you read them, you didn't understand them. And then you went to a reading and you were just captivated. Just captivated. That happened to me with Robert Creeley. I couldn't believe why they thought so much of this guy. Then I heard him read, and there's a very distinctive way that he read, and it happened to contribute, to his poems, and I felt a connection. So I, said, okay, Creeley. But it doesn't happen right away. In other words, if you took one poem that's a wonderful poem and you showed it to everybody here, a number of people might really like it. But would they say that's a great poet who wrote it? Not necessarily. They would want to see more. They'd want to hear it. They'd want to think about it. They want to live with it a while. I think it takes a while. I think it's it grows. It grows on you. It's a nice feeling when it does. There's a scene, Larry Levis. There's a scene in a Levis poem that I love in which he comes down, I think it's Levis, he comes downstairs and it's really hot and his parents are asleep and they're all kind of stretched out in different ways. And he sees them entirely and all their little infractions and disruptions of their body. And how the body, when you look at it close, it's awful. He has this experience, and what he's really doing is he's recognizing, just human frailty, and age and whatnot. And he has this experience, and then he goes off. He goes off on his own to do stuff. And the poem is just startling to me, and I love his poetry anyway, but this is the one scene I really remember. Coming downstairs, seeing his parents. And anyway, that's enough, Tom, don't you think? That's enough bullshit.
One more question.
We didn't get to hear you read your broadsheet.
Am I what?
Yeah.
We didn't get to-
I didn't see my broadside.
Yeah, Sharon?
Sure.
Yeah. That's a nice ending.
Oh, that's a nice poem. I hope you'll have copies of this. Night fishing. The water is aglaze like loneliness at ease with itself. I cast and close my eyes for the whir out across the water, the lines striking the surface and sinking. I like waiting for it to settle on the bottom and jig it up a little. I imagine the lure in the utter dark. I play it lightly, fish rise, just shy of the surface. They play their glints off the moon on the water. I see too my own loneliness. It's not so big, and it breathes easily. Soon it may pretend it's rain. Rain blurs the water. There's nothing wrong with rain. I take a deep breath and cast and cast. Well, forget these guys, that sounds pretty good. I like that. Thank you.